Hello everyone, thank you for joining. We will begin shortly. Hello everyone, welcome and thank you for joining. We'll give just a few more minutes for people to join and we'll begin shortly. Hello everyone and welcome to today's live event with Presidio and Cyber Reason. Before we get started, we have a few housekeeping items. If you have any questions, please type them into the chat box area of the BrightTalk platform. We will answer all questions at the conclusion of the presentation. Today's presentation is being recorded. It will be available on Presidio's Bright Talk channel and can be found at presidio.com. To kick off today's presentation, I would like to introduce you to our presenters. Take it away, Charlie.
Good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, depending on where you are. Wanted to say hello and thank you very much for taking the time to join us. We do have two presenters today, myself, Charlie Winckless, as the Director of Cybersecurity Solutions at Presidio, and Raisha Chedda, who is a Director of Product Marketing over at our great partner, Cyber. So, Raisha, do you want to give any brief introduction to your background, and then we can get rolling with the content?
Yeah, hi everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you're joining us from. My name is Raisha Chedda. I am Director of Product Marketing at Cyber. I've been in the security space for around 10 years, and I'm really looking forward to doing this webinar with you guys.
Thank you very much. So, we're going to cover today the high level, right? We're going to go over the MITER attack framework, what it is, why it's useful, and we want to get a bit of an understanding from those of you out on there as to what you are, whether you're using it or not. Talk about how we can use it to secure your organization, and then move on to talk about how Cyber can do that in action. Really what we're going to do is just use Cyber as a great tool to exemplify the benefits you can get from using the framework as well. Then we'll open this up to any Q&A and see how that goes. So hopefully that's useful. So we're going to start off with a poll. If any of you are in full screen mode, you'll have to jump out and click on the vote button. We would like to see how many of you are already using MITER ATT as part of your framework today. So give people a couple of minutes to answer that question and then move on to talk about the framework itself. So while people vote, we will keep talking and keep this as relevant and active as we can. Go over what the attack framework is. So the attack framework, MITER came out a couple of years ago with a comprehensive breakdown of techniques, tactics, and processes that attackers are using to compromise networks. Broken down into phases and steps, and it's a huge, globally accessible, it's not US specific, it's not EMEA specific, database of how the adversaries are using these tools, what they can do, and how they can be defended on it. It's based not in theoretical ivory tower models, but absolutely based in the real world, what we are seeing, what's coming in from organized crime, what's coming in from cyber criminals, and what's coming out on the dark web forums, commonly originated in all of those. And it really focuses on detecting and seeing what's happening in those techniques, as well as correlation. Aisha, do you have any comments that you would like to make on the framework itself and what it is?
Yeah, so like you said, this is a attack model and a knowledge base of adversary behavior, and it really catalogs the attack life cycle of different adversaries and the platforms they choose to target, all based on real-world observations.
So, great. So how do we use it? So, Aisha, do you want to take this one away? Take this one, and let's talk about what it really is and what it really does in the evaluation.
Yeah, sure. So if you look at it, the focus that MITER the MITER framework they put together with this framework revolves around three key performance indicators, if you will. The first is about helping us defenders to improve our ability to detect when these techniques are used, to both, able to detect our breaches, as well as in the post-breach stage to get better at detecting them. The second is that they put a lot of emphasis on how we correlate these things, because each and every single data point taken out of the MITER attack framework may seem totally legitimate. So as an example, when we see a net command in our environment being used to create a user, is that a bad thing or is it a good thing? And while it can certainly be used to do good things, it can also be used to do bad things and carry out malicious behavior. So the key question is that, is there enough evidence to see this and correlate together enough evidence with ideally the assistance of an analytics engine in the background, so we can get to a conclusion that a particular behavior or a TTP that was observed in a context is bad or a good, and being able to piece that story together. And then the third KPI is really the visibility into the telemetry sources that we need to have deployed in our environment to see each and every one of those techniques when they happen. And when you look at MITER methodology, it's not that it's focused on any product. It's not focused on, say, endpoint products or network products, but it's focused on, what type of coverage we need to have as an organization or as defenders to be able to identify when certain techniques are being used. And some of these techniques provided by the MITER framework may be best served in our network. And giving us that overarching 10,000 feet view on what is that we need to have and how we need to operate in order to make sure that we have good coverage and good visibility into different attack groups are capable of doing. And the point in this framework, as we alluded to earlier, is getting a result that is a tangible reduction in our mean time to respond as defenders. And this is not only a product thing. It is a combination of how we operate as people, how we collaborate, how we structure processes, and how we train ourselves over time, as well as the technology that we use to support these processes. And the key value of this is educating us as a community of defenders in what we need to do to dramatically drive down our mean time to respond to these attacks.
Yeah, and this is obviously even more critical as we start to talk about things, the number of attackers living off the land, fileless attacks. That's all bringing it home by understanding, to your point, what combines together to really be a hostile attack. Or a hostile attack, I don't think there's any such thing as a non-hostile attack there. But what is an attack is going to drive their business. So it's a great it's a great framework because it's not product. It looks like about half of our users right now who are listening are already using it, which is a great step. A lot of other people are using some of the other standard frameworks. And what I'm really encouraged to see is that we don't have anybody either voting or willing to admit that they're just trying to wing it and make it up. That's obviously the hardest thing because it leads to confirmation bias and many other devices. And both CyberReason and Presidio are huge fans of adopt, use, and drive to a standard framework that works for your organization and that matches what you need to be able to execute on. So, jump over to our next. So how do you use these results? So we've talked about a lot of this before, so we probably won't spend a lot of time on this slide, but what is this good for your organization? It really is a framework to reduce your mean time to remediate. So the faster you can get to find it by having more efficient alerts, by having really high quality alerts, and having actionable alerts, it's going to be important. We've all heard the stories about products a decade ago or more that told organizations they were being compromised 6,000 times an hour. But because the alerts weren't actionable, they weren't efficient, and they were not necessarily labeled as quality, they weren't acted on. So by having the products or your solutions and your environment evaluated against the framework, you're able to really say, is this going to make me better? Am I going to be able to join this community of defenders who are able to respond faster? And we can start to kick people out of the networks, off our hosts, much quicker than we ever were able to before. So let's look at what an action evaluation looks like. Oh, sorry. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that, Charlie, that you're absolutely right. And, ultimately the goal of MITER ATT or any other, evaluation, similar evaluation is to, identify how fast you can contain an attack and provide with some sort of actionable threat detection to, reduce your time to respond to that attack. So, make sure that those alerts that you receive are actionable.
Yep, the less time they're in your network, they may have damage, but the less damage they will be able to do as well. So let's talk about an action evaluation, and why don't you discuss this one and talk us through how this works.
Absolutely. So if you look at MITER report evaluations, they usually report a large number of matrices. So, and this, what we see right now is the upcoming round 3. And for round 3, they have chosen to emulate the threat group that are identified as Carbonac or Fin7. Now, just for those of you who don't know, this is a very financially motivated threat group that has, primarily targeted the retail industry using point-of-sale malware. So the attacks that we saw via Target or Home Depot breaches, that's what this upcoming evaluation focuses on. And as you can see in the screenshot here, the matrices, you can see the matrices they are planning to report on, and they have revised few categories from their last round, which is APT 29. And while the main categories are mostly staying the same, there are some changes to the detection categories from last time to just make things simple. So as you see, you have a not applicable, none, telemetry, general, tactic, and techniques as the detection categories. Now, none will be only used when the vendor was not able to meet certain required criteria. And then the additional category with none, which is not applicable, this kind of focuses on whether a capability existed by a vendor to meet the minimum detection criteria. And then for this round, there are only 2 modifiers, which will be the delayed and config change. All of the modifiers, including MSSP and the correlated, the ones that we like, the correlated one is no longer there. A big change from the earlier test is, inclusion of the protection category. So earlier 2 rounds of MITER, they just focused on the detection piece, but now they will also focus on whether the vendors have capability to not only detect, but block certain kind of attacks, and whether they provided a reason why they blocked, preventing the red team from executing, or they prevented the red team from executing, but required a user to take an action.
And that's key, of course, because detection is great. We all love to detect attacks, but if we can block them before they come in, we don't have to do that detection, and it's that automation piece is fundamentally critical. So let's talk a bit about how we can do this in a scalable fashion within each of your organizations. So first, we're going to do some focus areas. We're going to use some areas which are going to help you build a program for this detection using MITER and make some recommendations that you can adapt from. So first, pretty obviously and pretty basically, put the defender in the center. We are going to start by looking at this from a how can we defend? How can we protect? That extra step in this round 3 evaluation. And how can we detect what happens? And how real are those, and what is valuable to our defender? So we want to make sure that the detections are clear, and make sure that those detections focused on the defender, so the defender knows rapidly and quickly what to do, not just that something's happening, but some steps. And again, to shrink time, because the shorter time that is exposed, the less damage that can be done. Raisha, what do you think about this, about the focus areas for this?
No, I completely agree with you, Charlie. And I think we talked about it earlier. You know, the whole focus with this is making sure that the defenders get, doing what they're best at, and they can detect things early, understand what was the attack about, what was the threat about, and finally really, really reduce that time to detect and remediate with the goal of avoiding any material damage to the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. So we want to enhance your security operations practice, give you some of these guidelines, and help you have a cheat sheet that you can build and use the best in market tools like Cyber and best in brand organizations to help you build it, like Presidio. And obviously we're both a little biased when we say that, and we both work for those organizations. But I don't think either of us would be at the organizations we're at unless we believed that about our companies. So first, we want to create a closed loop security process, and we'll drill into each of these areas and give some guidance on what that really means as we go through this deck. We're going to look for those KPIs that Raisha talked about, those things, those key performance indicators that we can use to measure that we're getting actionable data, and also to ensure that what we're looking at really is what we should be looking at, and that we're not getting distracted by whack-a-mole in the alert trees. And then some best practices for, we've got great protection. Protection has been an established cybersecurity discipline I started in cybersecurity almost 25 years ago now, and that was all we did, antivirus and firewalls, and it was good enough. Certainly not good enough anymore, but detection and threat hunting, enabling and enhancing our human intellect with some of the best tools and processes that we can get to make them most effective. So we'll start with talking about this closed loop process and what that looks like. So there's 5 really simple steps here that's going to happen. The first one, establishing some inputs. So Raisha, why don't you talk about what the inputs you typically establish were, since I didn't give you a chance to talk about that last slide. Let's drill in together on this one and bring all our combined expertise to bear to help everybody. So we're going to establish some base inputs, and then we're going to put some criteria in place that we're going to test about. What are we testing? What are our TTPs that are critical? Really, what are the threats using our threat intel that apply to us, to our vertical, to our industry, and that we believe are valid and we test about? And we're going to use that to build an adversary emulation plan. Not just an atomic solution. Raisha really pointed out earlier, it's not one-offs, net command, or PowerShell executed. It's, did this chain of events look like an attack that came from Apt 29, from the last round of MITER evaluations, from Fin7, or from another adversary group that's targeting your organization? May's ransomware group is probably one that's near and dear, in the exact opposite sense, to many of us right now, especially with their collaboration with some of these other groups. And we're going to build a plan that looks like the adversary we're worried about. Then we're going to run attack simulations. So we've got a plan. We know we're trying to emulate an adversary. We've got a model that says these are the MITER TTPs that adversary uses. Now let's generate those into our environment, either organically or ideally by partnering with a strong external red team organization that knows this thing and does this day in, day out. The blue team gets to alert, hunt, and report. Did I see it? Was I able to find it with a hunt, with my day-to-day processes or in an alert process? And then report what was good, what was bad, how fast did I find it? Because I know when it started, so I've got great metrics to look at it. And then I can use that data to feed back into my program, the closed loop, to drive process improvements. Do I need more tools? are some of my tools not really effective and need to be replaced with others? How am I going to do, and how am I going to also train my people to be more effective? Raisha, what have you seen out there on these closed loop processes?
Sorry, Charlie, I was speaking earlier too, and it was in mute. I think you're absolutely right. Yeah. To your earlier question, usually, when you look at APs, you need to model APs based on a particular set of TTPs. For example, take case of MITER, and they have created an AP for APT3 to showcase, how it can compromise the system and how sensitive data can be exfiltrated out. And if you look at these kind of, if you look at it holistically, if you look at creating a closed loop system, you can take this system and these 5 steps and integrate it with any strategy to, make sure that you are continuously improving your defense with this attack framework.
Yeah, absolutely. Key, it is continuous improvement. We say a lot of times security isn't a destination, much as we all love to get there. It's a journey. I'm sort of happy about that because it keeps me employed, and honestly, this 25 years of it is obviously my passion, and I was so happy when I found something like this that I could really bury myself in for a career. So there's another big key point here that we want to bring up. It's not about the number of alerts. Yeah, we want to get alerts, but if you're generating thousands of alerts or alerts for every single step of the way through this process, alert fatigue is a very real problem. With most SOCs, we've all seen it, and our tools have to be there to not generate alerts randomly. Again, the target breach, we talk about this one a lot, massive number of reports, it was Neiman Marcus, was being reported as breached, but the malware was in their system, it was executing for a significant period of time, but it was not a high quality, timely, actionable insight. It was flagged up, and we'll get talking, but this is a problem that's not gone away, as unknown malware. Other things took priority. Aisha, your thoughts here. So.
Yeah, I think one thing that can be easily, the way MITER attack framework is designed, one thing somebody can easily have a side effect, I would like to say, is having a large number of alerts and maybe an increase in false positives. Because, you kind of alert on every single technique or every single tactic. But if you really look at it, and if you want to look at increasing your, security team's efficiency, making sure that they get to respond to the alerts that really matter, then it's not really the number of alerts you get, but it is about the what they can present as a picture and how you can get insights into it to ultimately kind of respond to it in a timely manner. So I completely agree with you, Charlie, that it's really not about the number of alerts.
And we've definitely got a question from the audience that I think is actually fascinating. Is there a minimum team size or company size that provides value? And I don't think there is. I think you've got to have enough people to do the job. But that's a key security problem. We're always in a talent gap. What this really will let you do is focus the limited resources you have on what matters for your organization and for you. What do you think of that? So.
Yeah, I agree that, there is no minimum team size. You could be a team of 2 to 3 people, or you could be a really large organization, of say 20, 30 security team over there. But it's taking what MITER offers and making sure that you are adapting it to what works for you to protect your organization.
Yeah. So I'm hoping that answers whoever asked that question. Thanks. It is a great question because we do not want to, this is not a one-size-fits-all, but it's a one size that adapts to all. And I'm going to turn it over to you now, and I should let you move on and talk a little bit about what those actionable insights could be and where we can get from. So.
Yeah, so like Charlie said, first we need to make sure that we create a closed loop security process. And then the second piece in kind of operationalizing MITER ATT&CK for your organization is making sure that you have KPIs that provide actionable insights for you. And according to us, the two important KPIs, if you will, is derivatives of the matrices that MITER provides. So first is the correlation efficacy, and second is MTTR reduction. So if you look at it, again, like I said earlier, the goal of MITER ATT&CK framework is to identify, which products can best contain attacks and provide you with some sort of actionable threat detection to reduce your mean time to respond. And to drive down the mean time to respond, as an analyst and as a security defender, you must receive real-time alerts as quickly as you can. And those alerts should be enriched with a lot of context so that you can get a complete story of an attack. And the ability to correlate data unaided and in real time, it provides an immense advantage to the defenders, because using this data, you can create a full story within moments of initial detection and, see the complete picture so you can respond to the critical pieces. And this makes all the difference between stopping an attacker and, having that material damage to an organization stopped. And it also gives security analysts an intuitive understanding of the path that attackers took, significantly shortening your time to respond and remediate. And then again, like we said earlier, being able to reduce that time to respond is one of the most relevant metrics for evaluating any effectiveness of an EDR solution you're looking out there. Because the lower the ability of a solution to reduce the mean time to respond, the greater the risk the organization will have. What are your thoughts over there, Charlie?
Absolutely. We've all seen this. We've all seen the metrics. We all read the DBIR. People are active in networks for hundreds of days, but if you can catch them fast, it's unlikely they popped a critical device first. They probably popped an endpoint. They popped a server that was exposed. Hopefully you're paying attention to your crown jewels, and hopefully you're securing those better. So reduce your MTTR and make sure that you're reacting correctly. Yeah, totally agree. Ben.
And moving on, the first step in operationalizing this framework is include best practices for threat hunting and detection. And we'll look at some of the ways, any good tool, and we'll just take example of Cyber and how they can do that. So some of the things you should include as best practices is to make sure that you improve your detection capabilities and detect anomalous or, abnormal TTPs by making sure that your TTPs are grouped together, and use analytics to make sure you have really high quality alerts with high alert fidelity. The second thing is you want to make sure that, all the alerts that you get are correlated together, for you to be able to kind of get that actionability. And then third is making sure that any threat hunting tools that you use have the attack techniques and tactics kind of incorporated in them, so it's easier for you to search based on certain technique IDs. What are your thoughts on that, Charlie?
Yeah, threat hunting is a human experience, and we're using human intellect. So we want to make it as easy as possible for the people to do their work. And these groups and particular tools, right? Technology is a force multiplier here. And we're all in cybersecurity, so we all love to use military metaphors as much as possible. So but you need the right force multiplier in place to make your people more efficient. It comes back to that question. Is there a minimum size or company? Not really, because if you have less staff compared to your organization size and structure, the more you need really good practices around this. So we're going to go to the next poll. How many of you out there listening right now actually have an active threat hunting practice already in play? Are you doing this already, or are you relying on Protect? Or are you just burying your head in your sands, hoping that no one's inside your network and you haven't been popped? So I've made that question live. Once again, if you're in full screen mode watching this, I'm glad you're enjoying the fantastic slides that Cybereason helped us put together. Well, to be honest, Cybereason did most of the work, and as usual with us. And then we come out of full screen mode and go into your vote box to take a look and see how we are using threat hunting today. And while we do that, we're going to look at how Cybereason, as a product set, we're not, again, saying necessarily this is yours, but how would you use Cybereason to do many of these things that we've talked about, using their threat graph and their ability to optimize your detection model with the MalOps and evidence. So leave that poll running and see how it goes. So let's talk about how we would do this with Cybereason, Aisha. I think this is bringing you to the fore once again, and I'm so glad I'm presenting with you with the complementary expertise you bring to us.
Absolutely, and I really appreciate your 25 years of your experience, which really adds a real-time color to this. So like we talked earlier, some of the best practices for, using detection and threat hunting, first is to make sure that your TTPs are grouped together. So we can get further value out of these attacks if we group these attacks based on similarities across multiple assets, across a certain time period. That gives us the opportunity to automate the scoping of an incident. So as an analyst or a defender, you can respond quickly. So if you look at the screenshot over here, you can see that a particular threat was detected, and in this case, it was domain registration that we've identified, where 5 machines were affected, and instead of producing, say, separate alerts and separate attack stories, we could leverage the analytics to aggregate all of these allegedly separate events into a single attack story and plot it on a timeline for you to kind of get a complete picture. So that's the first one. The second one is, being able to correlate alerts with other information for actionability. I think we've talked about this multiple times during this presentation, that using analytics to gather information, really helps you kind of get that complete picture and importantly, reduce that false positive. Now, like I said earlier, if you look at MITER techniques, it can dramatically lead to a high number of false positives. And like Charlie said earlier, it's not really the number of alerts, but understanding those alerts with the context that you can see, and so you can identify the complete picture and you can get to the right things that matter. Do you have anything to say over there, Charlie? I know this is Cybereason, but what are your thoughts on being able to correlate?
It's critical. It's critical. You can't wade through a forest of alerts and actually be able to do anything. We want to spend our time looking at what's most important, and that means tying this together, and not just tying together on one machine, but tying this together across platforms, across machines, and across environments, so we can see the complete picture of what's happening, whether it started with a mobile device, an endpoint, or a server. You've got to be able to tie it all together. You've got to be able to look at it. And correlation is, we started with SEAM. This is the secret sauce. This is how to make ourselves more efficient.
Completely. And then the final thing is, being able to threat hunt using those attack techniques. So if you look back at what we talked about APs, now in a hunt framework, the best use of APs and attack simulation is twofold. First and foremost, they inform you your hunt operations so that your team can look for techniques in the real world on a day-to-day basis. And second, they can also provide a roadmap for automating the identification of attacks with a really high degree of fidelity. And this is all only possible if the organization has the capability to detect the right TTPs. If you're unable to detect the TTPs, you are not going to be able to kind of see what's happening. So if you look at it, being able to threat hunt with certain TTPs, say like technique IDs, is really, really critical as you look at establishing that best practices using the MITER attack framework. And finally, as closing thoughts, we'd recommend that you take a holistic approach while using the MITER attack evaluation. Again, the goal of MITER attack framework is to make sure that you find malicious threats in your environment so you can do something about it and contain it to reduce your time to respond. So don't look at single metrics like, say, number of alerts, but look at it holistically to evaluate how actionable the tools in your environment are. Second is use MITER attack to emulate adversaries known to target your specific industry. And APs coupled with TTPs are important when testing and building that strong defense against threats targeting your specific industry. Make sure that you refresh your AEP plan and run new simulations at least once a year, because adversary groups change their techniques and tactics regularly, and your defense should reflect that. Now, these simulations leverage real-world attacks, so you can identify and tune gaps in your defense before the actual adversary strikes. And they can help your security team kind of reduce the load and give them greater visibility into the environment. And finally, once you have that, and once you get the reports in detail, you get detailed results of your AEP so your security team can improve detection, make sure that you incorporate it to your broader platform, including prevention and threat hunting capabilities. What are some of your thoughts, Charlie?
I think it's really important that you pick your adversary. So that's a big piece here, because there's no point in necessarily going against Bin 7 if you're in the healthcare industry and they're not targeting you as much. Maybe you're better spent your time building an AEP that matches an attacker targeting your vertical, working with your consulting partners and your threat intelligence vendors to say, this is what my AEP looks like. This is what it comes down to with this refresh your AEP simulations and run new simulations on a periodic basis. The attacker's going to change, their techniques are going to change, and your threat model and the threat landscape that applies to you is going to change. So you need to be thoughtful about what you do. You need to be and smart about it. And the last piece, I think, is this last one. At Presidio, we talk all the time about security being strategy, architect, implement, operate, and validate. And this ties so closely into that methodology that we've driven across our security practice for years. Have a plan, figure out how to make that plan into something more, have a picture of it, a strategy. Figure out how to make that happen. What's my adversaries? What's my AEP? Implement it, do what I'm going to do, and operate it, run it annually, run it more often, run it as often as your team can afford to, and after major changes, and then validate. Get this report, be honest, be clear. This is an opportunity to take a look at what you're doing through a clear pane of glass and to really drive execution to be better for everybody. And that's all I have on that one. I mean, threat hunting is something we talk about as being an advanced technique, but with the right tools underneath your belt, we saw half the people our SOC is doing it on an ad hoc basis right now. If I've got the right tools, that ad hoc time can be much more intelligently used. And if I'm training them with these adversary simulations, great, now I can really make them better at doing their jobs, and probably more excited about doing it because they're really going to get to work with some really cool attacks and toys. So I think we're a little early, so we can give everybody a little bit of time back. I know this is primarily a mountain time effort. So if you're like me, your stomach's probably rumbling a little bit and you're getting ready to get to your hangry phase of the day. So hopefully we give you a little bit of time, but thank you everybody for attending. We will have this recorded, as of all the sessions in the Presidio Virtual Security Conference. We hope you got some great thoughts and something to take back to your practices and your organizations to learn. And I really, especially again, want to say thank you so much to Cyber for stepping up, presenting this content, and providing us with such great expertise.
No, it was our pleasure. Thank you, Charlie, and thank you, Presidio. Thank you, folks, for tuning in.
All right. Well, this concludes today's webinar. Thank you, everyone, for attending this live event. If you have any further questions, please reach out to your Presidio account manager. Again, thank you for attending today's live event. Have a great day, everyone.